Hi guys, today's episode is the first part of a two-parter. It's with Erin Todd, an amazing athlete, clinician, a businesswoman. She's done a lot of fascinating stuff. Apologies in advance, the audio is not perfect. We had a few technical difficulties. We've smoothed them out as much as we can, but I would really encourage you to push through that because she's an amazing woman who's done some really good things, and it's well worth a listen. All right, enjoy. Okay, welcome to the Athletic Development Show, proudly brought to you by Iron Edge. Today's guest is Erin Todd. She is one of the best athletes I've ever trained in some ways, not necessarily the athletic, but in terms of as an impressive human being and what she's achieved. In my career, I've been lucky enough to train a lot of elite female athletes, Olympians, Liz Cambridge, Jenna O'Hay, Maddie Garrick. But Erin's achievements are at least as impressive, just they're not in the spotlight and they're outside of the mainstream of sport. As a junior, firstly, welcome to the show, Ez. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Aaron.
So Ez was an Oz rep as a junior, played 10 years in the WNBL, took a hand at rowing for a short while and got really good at that very rapidly. Oh, yeah. She's a mother of two. She's established herself as a well-respected podiatrist, founded and sold a group of successful clinics, has an MBA, and then picked up AFL at age 34 and is now playing for GWS and is working as the cricket development. I've forgotten. What's your role there, Ez?
So I'm the play development officer for the play development manager. In the female space. Yeah.
So this
for the girls.
So much to talk about. So before we get into all that, I want to talk about take you back to a story as that I reckon is kind of the best and the worst of sport. And so it's the elbow story. And a little bit of context. So as you started training with me when you were 19 or 20, like a real youngster?
Yeah, I reckon I was probably 17. Hey, I was still at school.
Were you
my
really?
First season at Dandenong. Yeah, so I was coming. Yeah, so I was a little bit younger than that, but yeah, still pretty young, yeah.
Pretty young, yeah. And Ez rapidly became one of my favourite athletes I've ever coached because you attacked the gym with that joy and fierceness, like you just went after it and you're just great to be around. And you're not meant to have favourites, but I don't reckon I've ever wanted someone to succeed in sport as much as I wanted you to succeed. I was pretty invested in your success. And you'd forced your way onto the Australian Sapphires squad, and there was a World Championship campaign in the offing. And we were away at the AIS. And one of the things that goes on behind the scenes in sport is the first, if you've got a team of 12, the first 9 or 10 players, they basically select themselves. It's really straightforward. And then the coaches spend the next 40 hours debating over the 10th, 11th and 12th spot. And because of the coach that I was working for, Gary Fox, very inclusive coach, so he actually included me in all those meetings. So I knew exactly where things were at. And you were right in the mix for one of the later spots. And we're playing against, was it Japan?
Yeah, it was Japan.
Yeah, we're playing against Japan, and you just had this passage of play for about a 6-minute passage of play where you played so good, I just knew you'd locked in the spot. Like you just played really well and you had it. And then you could tell exactly what happened because I remember the aftermath, but exactly what happened in the moment.
Yeah. I still remember very clearly what happened. Unfortunately, I wish I could get rid of it, but I remember, obviously for me to make that team, I had to be a bit of a hustle player and definitely bring a lot of energy. And I still remember the court we're on, where I was at. I was at the top of the 3-point line, and I deflected the ball. Obviously we were playing defense. I deflected the ball, and then as I went to deflect it, I sort of ran after it, as you do. So my arm extended, and their centre, who knows, would have been 6'4", 120 kilos, ran one way, and Michaela Domkins ran the other way, and my arm got sort of wedged in between them, and obviously, long story short, dislocated my elbow, so I went down. And I still remember, and I tell people this story about Gary, I was on the ground, and I remember the advice my dad when I was little was always just get up first and then see if you're okay. Like if you can just get to your feet, you'll probably be okay. And I went to get up. Well, I looked at my arm and it obviously wasn't facing in the right direction. So as I went to get up and looked at my arm, I was like, oh, I don't think I should get up here. That doesn't seem right. And so I like put my other arm, my good arm, up and I was like, I don't think I'm okay. I don't think I'm okay. And if you remember Gary strolled onto the court and he's like, you're okay, Erin, you're okay, you're okay. And then he looked at me and he's like, she's not okay, she's not okay. And at that point it was done, wasn't it? Arm was out. Yeah, it wasn't pretty. So, but it is really interesting. I think those really traumatic experiences, you still are so clear in your mind exactly what happened. And then obviously, the aftermath wasn't a great result, but in a lot of ways you learn so much from that stuff, don't you?
Yeah, I still remember. It's very vivid for me. I remember you and someone like you've swore like you should fuck like you were.
Yeah, definitely would have. Yeah.
And someone's like, can we get you some Panadol or something? And you're like, it's not the pain. Because you were just angry because you knew you had that spot and there was no healing time to go away for Worlds. Like that was it.
No, it was next week, wasn't it? We were flying out the following week. Yeah.
So
that's right.
It was done. And so some backstory that you wouldn't have been aware of is that Gary knew how invested I was in your success. And he's quite a thoughtful man, and also he just he read me like a book, and he just turns to me later on, going back to the rooms. He's like, "Just keep it together, Durham."
Look, I think in those situations you really do sort of learn how much people care about you, don't you? Like even people that you don't realise, and not you. I knew you cared about me, but even other players. I think people were like visibly a bit shaken from the experience, obviously because my arm was out as well. That's never nice to see in a teammate. But yeah, I definitely, as a massive consequence, I definitely felt loved. It doesn't make up from the fact that I couldn't go to Worlds, but the support was very good.
Yeah, everyone cared a lot, and so that to me that was like one of those moments. That's the worst of sport because it was completely unfair. You'd done all the like if life was fair, that just wouldn't have happened. Like it was just such a great example. But I reckon one of the best of sports was when you first saw me afterwards, and your first thing you said to me was you said, "Durham, are you okay?" Like. It was just one sentence that summed up, I know how much you care. I care about how you care too. It was just like that sort of transcendent team sport moments, which kind of what it's all about. Because when it's all over, we care less about the wins and losses, I think mostly, and more about the people we played with. So it was kind of cool.
Well, that is so true, isn't it? Like I think, in the moment, you're 19, so you're pretty upset. But I think as a 35-year-old now, I can reflect and still be like, well, I was probably good enough to make that team. So it's not as good as going, but I think at the time it's hard, but you can reflect later and be okay with it.
Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
I'm still a bit dirty, but no.
And as long as you don't say "what if," I think the worst sentence is if only I'd tried harder. Like I think that's the absolute worst. So following on from that, the reason that I wanted you to succeed so much was your drive was world class. Like if there was medals handed out for drive, like you would be gold medal every time. Often people who are really driven are also have some sort of weird chip on their shoulder. But you seem to come from a really nice family and you're really quite a well-balanced person. I want to know where you got your mongrel from because you had proper white line fever.
Yeah, proper. Yeah. It's a really good question. Like, obviously my dad was a really good football player. He played at Fitzroy. And my mum's side of the family were really good athletes as well. A couple like mum's dad and mum's grandfather were like top Australian cyclists. So I don't think my chip or my edge came from a negative experience. I think it's come from just a real passion of sport. Like I just love sport, everything, live and breathe it. I could watch two people flicking each other if that meant somebody was like winning a gold medal and I had a bit of a backstory and I was going with someone. I'd be all in on
You'd
it.
be all in on it, yeah.
So I think it's more like, I know I'm a very driven person, maybe to fault sometimes, and I think it at times potentially rubs people up the wrong way on the court, not off the court. I'm pretty laid back off court. But I think it's more of a passion. Like I just think if you're going to do something like what you just said, you've got to be 110% all in. And then no matter the result, you can actually sit back and go, oh, well, I legitimately tried my best. I cannot think of one thing I shouldn't have done or could have done better. And I think for me personally, I try and do that with everything. So then I can live really easily in my own mind knowing, well, I couldn't have got not one more piece out of myself for any experience, whatever that may be.
That's awesome. And you've applied that in a whole bunch of areas outside sport as well, which I want to talk about. There's so many interesting things. The first is podiatry. So what I want to know is, why did you want to become a podiatrist? What drove you to that?
Yeah, good question. I think like most people coming out of school, you don't really know what you want to do completely. I was always kind of interested in health science type courses, and I was sort of tossing up between, do I do physio, do I do podiatry? And I literally just went to La Trobe Uni open day and thought, there is like a million people wanting to do physio. Why don't I just do something slightly different?
Yeah, okay.
So, and I actually really enjoyed physics at school. So that was one of my favourite subjects. So there's a lot of biomechanics in podiatry. So the podiatry work I did was more biomechanical based sports injuries. So I just sort of made it, despite the fact that the businesses were health, like aged care and just general podiatry aligned, the actual work I did was mainly in sports injuries and biomechanics. But I think I just chose a health science degree. I enjoyed it. And then, just made it really sort of interesting to what I like doing.
So I was talking to one of our coaches, Hayley, last week. We were talking about functional anatomy because we've been interviewing all interns for our internship, intern candidates rather, for our internship. And our functional anatomy in here at Core is really strong, except hands and feet. We're like, nah, you're on your own. There's just too much going on there to know.
Yeah.
What are the things that, or sort of, are there obvious because in most fields that, if you talk to any industry, you talk to people, subject matter experts, they'll talk about that's a massively held misconception about X, Y, and Z. Are there any obvious misconceptions that you see about the feet and how they operate that you could talk about to make S&C coaches smarter about them? Because I'd like to be slightly smarter about the feet than I am. Are there any things that jump out of you in terms of gait, pronation, supination?
I think so. Like, I think we've gone through a bit of a bit of a cycle, haven't we, where we went really stable, orthotic, like shoes that were chunky, high heels. Then we went like nothing at all. You were running with nothing on your feet. Yeah, like the Vibram 5 fingers.
I had 5 pairs of those.
Yeah, well, there you go. And now I think we've sort of, hopefully found a bit of a happy medium, and we can use different things as a tool, but like we've found a bit more of a medium between not being super like blocking of pronation or stable or chunky. And this is, I say this with the premise on it's very individual for each person. So some people are just going to need more stability to not get shin splints constantly while playing a court sport.
Yep.
So just help them do that. So then, and then other people won't need any support. So I think probably your good podiatrist, like your really knowledgeable podiatrist, will be able to identify that person. But also I'm a huge advocate of use a little bit of all of it in different aspects of your training. So you could do some barefoot stuff and be really like training your feet, but then still have orthotics in your basketball shoes if you need them. So I don't think they sit on opposites where we've put them. Oh, you either do this or you either do that. I think you can use all of it to train yourself. It's sort of like being in the gym, right? Like if you've got a shoulder injury, you're going to actually have to do some sort of, like rotator cuff stuff eventually.
You're not just going to put it in a sling forever and go there, sorted.
Yeah, exactly. But then you probably won't get them to do free weight chin-ups day one of their program.
Yeah.
So I think we need to use both to make our feet stronger and really knee down stronger. I think that's probably a misconception that it's just feet or it's just then gastroc soleus. I think it's knee down. If you think about your classic overpronator and everyone's like, oh, they've got shin splints, they've probably got really significant perineal tendinopathies as well. And you've got to look at all of it a little bit, yeah.
And so in the territorial dispute that is the human body, your thing is that pods are actually, that's within your territory, knee and down?
If it's biomechanic related.
Yeah.
If you cop a blow to your knee or do your ACL, I do not want to see you, obviously. But if it's from some sort of reaction from ground up, then yes.
Okay, cool. And what were the things so you go to uni and you learn a lot of the theory. What were the things that surprised you when you got out and started practicing? Were there any big differences in what you'd been taught and then what you actually saw?
Yeah, I just think you can, and you would be able to attest to this. You just can't learn and see different representatives of the same injury until you've actually treated for 10 years. So you can see someone with plantar fasciitis and they might present differently for 10 different people. But the first time you see someone with plantar fasciitis, you don't have those 10 representations of it.
Yeah.
So you just can't replicate experience, can you? So the longer you practice, the better you get. And then you just learn your own tricks on how to take something different or how to get better, coaching, get better patient buy-in. So I just don't think an orthotic's going to suit this person because I can already hear the negative feedback coming back. So why would you give them a pair of orthotics really? So little things like that, you just can't replicate that other than just having 10 years of experience.
Just have to pick it up, yeah. It's one of my biggest regrets is that there's a bunch of athletes who I absolutely adore, and I coached a lot of you guys, like you, Jess Bibby, Carly Wilson, all those guys from sort of that time. And I coached you guys all when I was crap. I look back
so it's your fault.
I can't believe they did what I said. I had no idea because I was in my first 10,000 hours. I'm now 25,000 hours in, and I'm I pretty much know what I'm doing now. But
that's actually the funny thing, isn't it? Because you say you can't replicate the 10 years of experience, but that person listening to you in year one doesn't know that you crap.
No.
So,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that's the best bit.
Yeah. So I went down a journey of minimalist footwear, and I wore the toe shoes for a couple of years until the teasing got too much for me. And I actually did the thing where you do it and then you get Achilles tendinopathy because you weren't quite ready. And even though I was so careful with it, and now I'm in a great place where I run a pretty minimalist, and my feet have never felt happier or stronger. It's definitely a good thing. What would you suggest for people that are interested in having that idea of having strong feet but not necessarily exposing them to barefoot shoes? Other than running in grass, are there foot exercises that you like as good sort of prep things? Like we warm up the glutes, we warm up the gluteus medius, we do all these things. I just do some calf raises and some bent knee calf raises before I run. Do you have any other things that you suggest?
Yeah, you can do some really specific foot stuff, which is nothing too crazy, but just spreads.
Mm-hmm.
If you sit there, literally sit in a chair, knees bent at 90 and just try and spread everything out.
Mm-hmm.
But actively thinking about activating all of it, not just the big toe and the other ones follow.
Yep.
And then can you do that? Can you keep them along the ground? As in, can you control that movement?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can do obviously first raise sort of lifts or, if you were to think about pushing down with your first and then bringing that piece of paper back.
Okay.
Can you do that with the other ones, not flying out in the air or not scrunching and contributing?
So I've just got to do the first one by itself.
Yeah, because that will actually
hard.
activate. Yeah, very hard. And that will be what keeps your foot up from pronating.
Right.
If you can get that one really quite, activated or strong, then that's going to support you through that sort of pronation or that weight bearing phase.
Will that make me run faster?
Not you, no, but some people know. It could make you unbuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talk us through that again. So you're in bare feet. You're sitting on a seat, and you've got a big
table,
toe.
not like seat nicely.
Yep.
If you think this is my big toe.
Oh, now we're audio mostly, so paint a picture with your words.
Okay. Okay. Think big toe pushing down. Like say you had a piece of paper under the end of that big toe.
Yep.
You're first, and you're drawing that piece of paper back with control, but second, third, fourth, and fifth are not contributing. So they're not scrunching. They're not curling at all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and you'll literally have a disconnect. You'll have a disconnect from your brain to your feet. You won't be able to do it. But if you keep working on it, you'll actually slightly start to get it. And then you could progress that by really having the other second to fifth relaxed, so completely not activated. Then you could progress to maybe standing. Could do it if you can try and do it standing, and then maybe 1 foot on 1 foot doing it. If you can get it then you know you're going really well.
All right. I'm going to give that a go, and I'll report back. Very good.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts around the foot before we move on? I want to chat to you about some business stuff, but other sort of clinical foot things. Yeah,
I think the stronger your calves are, the better you are. So get heel raises. Big time, weighted, ISOs, as much as you can. You should be able to do 20 perfect single legs, no dramas, control down, right before you even think about running over.
That's down to the floor or off a step?
Yeah, off a step would be ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like calf strength's the open layup for performance enhancement too. Like we fiddle around with all these complicated exercises that take so long to teach. And a big part of propulsion is that spring really strong? So,
and that like reactivity in your ankle if you're strong through your calves. And like you just think about if you take a couple of weeks off sport, what's the first thing when you go back?
You're in all sorts.
It's always your calves and your Achilles because it's just always. Like, I've stopped working.
I'm religious about doing my calves. So I run 3 times a week, and after each run I do my calf routine. I do a seated calf, bent leg, and a standing calf. Without fail, I just do it every time.
Perfect.
So mine are in pretty good shape. But still, I tried to start playing basketball again last week because I'm coaching my daughter's team. She's in under 10s and I'm coaching her team. And I missed a shot, and all these little 9-year-olds were giving me shit. I was like, oh God, I need to actually be able to shoot again.
Yeah.
And so I was curious to see if I could still slap the backboard like in the good old days.
Yeah.
Not even close, like miles away. And so I tried jumping and I was like, literally the first 4 times, I was like, surely there's some mistake. Like I thought there was some error.
Yeah. I must have just muffed the run up.
Yeah. So I probably did about 10 max effort jumps. Not that much, but my calves though were so sore. It's such an important part of the chain. Okay, good advice. Changing gears a little bit, I want to talk business. So I always knew you were going to be very successful as a clinician. And then I was very pleasantly surprised to see that you were equally successful as a businesswoman. Tell us about your story, because you established clinics, you've sold them, you've done a lot in that space. How did you go about doing that? That's a fascinating story.
Yeah, I think so. I started as a podiatrist, obviously finished my degree, and straight away just got a job in a private practice. Working for someone else. Really good job, really nice little clinic. Like, the guy I was working for was a good guy. But literally about 2 months in, I'm like, why am I working for someone else? This just seems ridiculous. Why would you do that? Like, I could just open my own and do the exact same thing. So I did. Essentially, I just took some time to source a space. And
so
it's
2
funny,
months, so
you're
like 8 weeks in, and you're like,
yeah.
It's entrepreneur time.
You know I get bored quickly. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I probably would have been 6 or 8 months in before I actually opened the clinic. But I've sourced the space, and I just thought, and straight away, like, really interested in the business side of it. So I think it's important that you do have an interest in the numbers and you have a pretty good financial sort of management on just general ins and outs. It doesn't need to be very complicated, but can you cover your rent effectively and your bills? But yeah, so I sourced the space closer to where I was living at the time, And it was funny because I remember it now. Like I got a space and it was like a nice little clinic, but I had to redo the floors.
Mm-hmm.
So these tiles, and I didn't have a lot of money, right? Obviously, I only just started working. So I went and hired like a jackhammer thingy that gets the tiles up.
Right.
And I thought, this can't be too hard. But oh my God, I've never worked so hard for like 3 days of my life to even this floor off. So then someone could put like a nice wooden floor down for me. So
oh God, the things
that was my, yeah, exactly. The things, I'm sure you would have done that in a few of your gyms, right? Like some of the renos you do or things you move.
We did a thing. We laid, so our gym is 767 square meters. That's a big gym. Active gym space is 540 meters. And we laid our own tiles. And so my business partner, Jacob, Jacob is one of the most hardworking people you'll ever meet. He grew up fishing, doing, like the Deadliest Catch, those like scary industrial fishing.
Yeah.
Like his dad's one of those guys. So he would go out and fish for like 14 days straight with 2 hours sleep a day and, like extreme conditions. And so he's really battle hardened for hard work. And we did the floor laying and he was just like, I am never doing that again.
Fair enough.
Nearly broke us. It was fun.
Yeah, it's full on, isn't it?
Yeah. And so when you started, did you have a clear idea of, did you have a strategy of, well, other people are doing this? Like, was that you perceived why you would be more successful than the average bear? Like, what was it that?
I don't know if it was like. Yeah, I definitely had a game plan. So I'm like, initially what I thought was I need a couple of aged care contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings in like, set money each month and enough to cover my expenses. And then any patient I see is just money for jam after that.
That's a good strategy.
Or, money earned. So I was really fortunate. They'd just opened like quite a big aged care facility just down the road. So I won that contract, which was good. And that sort of covered my expenses, which meant that, like, I guess it takes the stress away a little bit. Still hard work. So you still got to go and do the task. But at least it's definite cash coming in. Because I think with any allied health or any small business, really, just to try and get in the green and out of red, if you can have that guaranteed each month, it takes like a huge element of the stress away. And then I guess my other point of difference was I was an athlete, so I thought most people that have an injury, an athletic injury, like to be seen by other athletes. Who doesn't Google and then says, they work with X team or they are that person. I want to go see them.
Yep.
So I thought in the end you have to sort of push that a bit, don't you?
So that was
that was my point of difference to say if you have a lower limb injury that's like a biomechanical related thing, Achilles tendo, plantar fascia, first ray, whatever it may be. Like, I've got experience in that. And I think you do naturally just from having played a lot of sport as well. So it definitely, while you can sell it, you definitely do have an advantage. There's no, there's no doubt in that. So I aligned the clinic as a sports podiatry clinic. While we still did all your general podiatry, but we did have that aged care arm under it that was sort of, I guess, paying the bills.
Nice. And so that's you as a solo operator. How did you then go about expanding? What was your approach there?
Yeah. So just through the aged care stuff, I sort of won a couple of other contracts as well. So that part of the business actually went really well. So I think we had maybe, I can't remember now, but maybe 9 facilities, which was really good.
That's amazing.
Hard work, really hard work, but like good money and guaranteed money.
The work itself's not that glamorous, is it? The aged care, that's a lot of shaving bits of the foot that aren't going great. Yeah,
exactly. It's just general treatment, essentially, for people that like effectively can't reach their own toes, like once you get to that age.
Yeah,
and it's just to make them safe so they don't hurt themselves. And then you've got a lot of people with comorbidity, don't you? So diabetes, some sort of like neural issues, that sort of thing. So just to, have and I think in nursing homes, they actually can only be treated by a podiatrist.
Right.
So a nurse can't do it. I guess they could get their kids to come in, but they're meant to have a treatment every 6 weeks.
Okay, cool.
So
It's very
there is
steady
some
work,
sort
isn't
of,
it? Yeah.
yeah, so really guaranteed. So once you win that contract, and once you're in that facility, like it's quite good. And then we sort of branched out and got into a couple of like retirement type villages.
Mm-hmm.
So that was by private appointment, but again, it's the same sort of clientele and therefore very guaranteed because they'll always book for the next 6 weeks and you book them in on the spot. So that part of the business went really well, which was good.
And how many people did you have working for you?
No, it was just me. So I was seeing a lot of patients, yeah. So I was probably doing maybe 2 days, full days every week. So if you think about seeing one clinic on a Monday every 6 weeks, you get your second clinic. So you choose your Monday for 2 weeks out of 6 weeks is taken care of. You get the third one 3 weeks out of the 6 weeks. So I built it that way in my own mind. Like, so if I could get 6 clinics, Mondays are aged care facilities. If you get 12, Monday, Tuesdays are aged care facilities. So I built it that way. And then I would see private patients in the initial clinic just on the other days. And then, so I built the aged care stuff alongside the clinic stuff. Then a physio friend of mine expanded his clinic, his physiotherapy clinic, and said, would you like to take some podiatry rooms in the clinic? And me being me, I just always say yes and then work it out later. Yeah. So I just opened up that one as well. And then from my time living in Adelaide, having played at the Lightning, which is when I hurt my elbow, I remember distinctively they've got SportsMed over there. You've probably been to SportsMed if you've been like to Adelaide. So they started that clinic or that company many years ago, and it started with just your allied health, and then it built to orthopedic surgeons and all your ancillary servicing, and then they built the hospital, the private hospital out back, and that's all the surgeons did their work. But awesome concept. And I always thought, how cool would it be to do that? And I think when I hurt my elbow, so I went and saw the physio there, and then they're like, go upstairs, go see the elbow. Or they might have even had MRI facilities. Go get your MRI. Got that, go up and see the elbow specialist, went for him, and he's like, great, we'll book him for surgery next week out the back. And I thought, what an amazing setup. Like everything on the spot, working together. And I think as an athlete, you're often given, or you are, the gold standard, aren't you? Everybody talks to each other. The physio talks to the surgeon, talks to the doc. But I always thought, like, the average person doesn't get that, do they? They sort of manage their own appointments. Yeah, they don't really know where to go. You'll often have someone come to you and they'll say, I've seen this person, and 2 other podiatrists. And I think it must be really hard to manage your own injury if it's not straightforward, if you don't understand the system. So I saw SportsMed and I had my experience with like just my own injuries. Not that I'd had that many other than the elbow, to be honest, but just seeing how that process went internally in sport. I just thought I have to do a proper clinic, like a multi-D clinic that had every service that spoke to each other and really was patient focused. So yes, you're still going to make money because you're a good practitioner. That's fine. I accept that. But if we get a patient into us, they are treated from like day one till they are pain-free. And we all work together. And if you need to push them on because your servicing's no longer helping, you must push them on to the next person or the person they should be seeing. And I just thought, imagine if we could get physiopodiatry, sports docs, your orthopods, everybody under the one roof that works really well together. How good would that be for the patient? So I just saw like a development down it was in Double Bay. So I was living in the east in Sydney, and they were building this new
fancy, yeah?
Yeah, it's fancy. So, so they had this old like Woolies, and they were knocking down the Woolies, they were building it out the back, and then they were building like another sort of, I guess, like I think there was a library and some commercial property as well in there. And I just thought, that's it. I'm going to open up the big clinic there. I'm just going to go all in.
Wow.
And give it a crack. And yeah, so I actually signed my lease, and it was a 10-year lease. So pretty risky, but good risk. I always thought, well, we're in Double Bay. Someone will take over my lease if I can't, if I can't make it work. before the building had even gone up. So I think like risky, but I think your biggest risk always sort of ends up reaping your biggest reward, doesn't it? So I think I would have signed, my lease would have been half of what it should be after the building had gone up and it looked amazing and everyone was down there. So I was pretty lucky in that sense.
That was a good move then, yeah.
It was. I remember my first meeting with like the commercial property guy, and I rocked up and I must have looked like I was about 12 years old.
Because you've got a baby face.
I do tend to look a little, and I would have been 23, 24. Yeah. Oh, no, probably a bit older, maybe 26.
Yeah, but
whatever.
You would have looked 18, but anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And I swear it was like, he gave me about 3 seconds of his time. Like, get out of here. I'm not signing a lease to you. Like, as if, like, this is somebody, like, pranking me. And then I had to, like, ask a few questions, see who else was involved in the company. And then we worked out one of my patients, like quite a successful patient of mine from a clinic elsewhere. I called him and I was like, look, I'm trying to sign this lease, but I'm just getting absolutely no respect. And he's like, I'll make a call for you, man. And we had another meeting and I ended up signing a lease. They knew I was serious then. So I had to call in a big gun, ask a favour to say, can someone please take me seriously, even though I might only look like I'm 20?
Yeah. Awesome. And so you built that up and that reflected the dream, like that actually worked, which is amazing. I'm curious about, you had a very clear vision. Sometimes when you've got a really clear vision, we can all be pretty exacting over trying to get everyone else to get on the same page. How did you achieve that? Because you would have been leading people that were actually senior to you in some areas, I suspect, if you're doing that well.
Yeah. And yeah, it was hard, like in that sense. I can look back now and as much as it was successful and I sold it, it was a lot of work and a lot of pushback to a young female who's a podiatrist. You know, I guess running a business with people that are much more senior, sports docs, orthopedic surgeons, those sorts of guys. Interestingly, the higher up they were in medicine, the easier they were to deal with. So I think they were so confident in themselves that they were like, yep, this is a good concept, and they were in. There was a fair bit of pushback in managing other people within the clinic, no doubt. I think initially the business was bought into. They really, most people, I would say almost everyone that came in and worked definitely bought into the vision.
Yep.
And I think probably because it does sound like the way you should be treated.
Sounds like the only way to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So that wasn't a hard sell. It wasn't a sell. For me, it was like, this is what I'm doing. Do you want to be involved? But it did not come with its challenges. There was definitely staff that pushed back hard and, you know, that we had to let go. Definitely. And that's business. As sad as you want everything to go smoothly and everyone to be on board, I think, you know, egos get in the way, don't they? And then like patients start to come in and then it's just the way it is. Like that's what happens in business. And I think like in team sport or anything, people is just like 100% the biggest thing. Like it doesn't matter how good you are, if you don't have the right people in a team, in a business, you know, whatever that is, it's going to come. It's going to come a cropper at some point.
I love the idea of the primary mission of the business should be at the start should be getting the right people on the bus and then getting them in the right seats. And once you've got that, everything else will just tend to flow from that.
Yeah, that's right.
I like it. So did you do your MBA while you were doing that, or did you do that after you'd sold the business?
Yeah, so I did it. I've still got a little bit to go, but I did it after. So I actually, interestingly, when I opened the big clinic, so the sports medicine facility, that the building that was going up that we were going to go in was being delayed. So it was meant to open in like September, I think, of 2015, and it ended up opening literally a month before I had my first child.
Right.
So in March the following year, so then literally I had Xavier. I remember this distinctively. I had him on a Sunday and it was Easter long weekend. So I had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, and then it was Easter long weekend, and then I had to go back to work the following Monday really and just keep going, because what do you do when you got 25 staff who just opened a brand new business?
Yeah.
So Zabe just came to work.
That's amazing.
Praise the Lord. He was the best little baby. He used to sleep for 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the day in his pram. He was such a gun.
That's amazing.
Hats off to him. So,
do you reckon he just somehow knew, Mum needs me to do this? This is that's because that's
I think it's just a fluke. He's a man, as if that's what he would have thought. No. Oh, well, maybe he did, or maybe I just hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
He was a very good sleeper. Both my babies were good sleepers, so I can't complain.
That's incredible.
Or maybe I was just so busy I couldn't hear him crying. I don't know. So no, I didn't. I did my MBA after I'd sold the business and all of that. So, and I think it's been really good, much better than my undergrad in the sense of once you've ran a business, owned a business, sold a business, to now go back and do an MBA. It was interesting. I'm doing an accounting subject at the moment, and I was doing some reading, and I thought, this would have been really helpful to have this knowledge when I was running the business, just one part. So you do part, say there's 3 parts to it. I definitely was doing 2 of them, but I wasn't doing one part of it. So I'm thinking that would have been really helpful. But then maybe I'm more invested in understanding it more because I've already had the experience of running the business. So, so it's been really cool going back and learning and doing some postgrad study again.
That's great. You just reminded me of one of my most irritating memories. 2 most irritating memories in my life are a friend of mine bought a house in Elwood really young, and I was just means she's going to pay her mortgage off a little bit early. No biggie. Because I didn't understand how property works. And now it's well played, I was an idiot. But the other one is, I'll never forget, I'm sitting in my second degree, which was a business degree, which I ended up dropping out of because I wasn't interested enough in it at the time. I'm sitting in a financial modelling class, and I was just being a bit of a dickhead, mucking around with a mate, not really paying attention. And a mature age student was sitting in front of me, and she turns around and she looks at me and she says, "You're going to wish you learnt this stuff one day. You'll need it and you won't be able to do it." And I was polite and I was quiet. But the amount of times I've been wanting to work out financial modelling and been like, she was so right.
Damn it. It is true, isn't it? But you just can't. It's like the experience thing. You can't know that you need it or be interested until you legitimately do need it and are interested.
And then it's suddenly fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the MBA's been good. Are there any, if you had to distill it down to a few takeaways, are there any big picture things that you learned that surprised you or that you wish younger you had known in terms of broad brushstrokes?
I think what it does is it reiterates that sport and business have so many parallels.
Mm-hmm.
And as we just touched on, it all comes down to people, managing people. And I think probably me as a younger athlete and having that white line fever and being so competitive, I think potentially I didn't manage that super well.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think if I'm reflective on that, that was one of my greatest strengths. So it's hard to potentially it wasn't managed that well by coaches maybe, in the sense that I think and we're getting better at it in women's sport, but I think one of the big things I think in women's sport is when someone's super competitive, we have other players thinking it like it's a personal attack on them. And I think for me as a younger athlete, I didn't even know that they were offended, that I was up and about, right into it from the moment we started training. So I have no off at training. I still don't, surprisingly. I thought it would have waned a little.
No.
I still don't, no. And that definitely can rub players up the wrong way. Not the right players, not the other players like your Jess Bibbies, your Emily McInerney, not those players. They're fine with it. But you can, I think probably the biggest takeaway is by the time I got to about 30, I reckon the common knowledge of me was she is such a dickhead until you get to know her. And that's because they'd only played against me and thought, how annoying is that person? And then I'm so different off the court.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you do like the leadership course was the first one you do in your MBA. And it's literally just managing people, managing yourself, different personalities, what you need to be for other people, what other people need to be for you, your strengths and weaknesses, so your massive blind spots, and then how you can, when you're managing someone and or being managed by someone, how you can quickly identify your, blind spot, so then there's not a conflict in personality and everybody achieves whatever they need to achieve. And I think my biggest takeaway is when you're young, you have no idea what your blind spots are.
Yeah, you don't even know who you are.
No, you don't. And that's okay, nor should you. But I think a really good coach or a really good leader or mentor or business person can help you identify that and can help manage different personalities. And that's all that I think at the elite level, that is the difference between winning and losing. And if you look at that Dandenong group, who was so successful, they managed
that. For context, back-to-back national championships, 44-6 over 2 years, and not a single Olympian in the group. So
exactly.
A group that really punched above their weight. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think
and a very emotionally intelligent group, like really high emotional intelligence in that group. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for the most part, that was like from the players and the coaches, it wasn't just one person. They managed their relationships very well. So then they all played somewhere near their best every night, trained somewhere near their best every session, and therefore were successful.
You just rack that up, and it just I was talking to my team this week. We're talking about there's a great Rick Charlesworth quote. The single biggest source of competitive advantage for a team is their level of connectedness. And I think that really, and to me, that the footnote on it is their average level of connectedness. So it's not just in aggregate; it's actually the level between every single person and every other single person. Because if you can have a couple of people who are hyper connected, but others that are less, that's actually worse. Almost like it's that even connection. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and how often do you see the star-studded team that don't win?
Yeah,
so often, right?
It's so common.
So if you can just get virtual, like if you get everybody to buy into what you're doing, it kind of doesn't matter what you're doing, does it?
Yeah.
Because at that level, everybody's good. Everybody runs offense. Everybody does a defensive scheme. Like, so you're not like doing something someone else isn't doing. You're just doing it better.
It's the intangibles that make you do it better. I like it. So it sounds like a really valuable experience, the course. Kind of crystallized a bunch of stuff. That's cool.